There's a specific moment when a woman announces she's engaged at 23, and you can watch the room split. Half the faces light up. The other half freeze into something that looks like concern but reads more like judgment. Nobody says congratulations without a qualifier anymore. What's interesting isn't the reaction itself, it's how predictable the pattern has become. Young marriage gets framed as a mistake that hasn't happened yet. Early motherhood gets treated like a career suicide note. And the strangest part? The people pushing this narrative claim they're defending women's choices. Let me be clear about what I'm watching unfold. When a 24-year-old woman chooses motherhood, she gets sympathy. When a 34-year-old woman chooses a cat and calls it her child, she gets admiration. Both are making choices about their lives, but only one is labeled empowered. The other gets labeled trapped. This isn't accidental. I've spent enough time watching this dynamic to recognize the structure underneath it. There's a script running, and most people are reading their lines without realizing they're in a play. The script says, financial independence equals freedom, domestic roles equal weakness, and motherhood before 30 equals the end of potential. Here's what that script doesn't account for. A stable marriage isn't just nice to have, it's load-bearing. When a man's home life is chaotic, his work performance crumbles. When a woman's relationship is unstable, her decision-making suffers. This isn't poetry, it's pattern. The person you choose to build a life with determines whether you're operating from a foundation or constantly repairing cracks in the basement. I've seen this play out in ways that don't get discussed publicly. The man who can't focus at work because his relationship is falling apart. The woman who makes impulsive decisions because her home life offers no stability. These aren't edge cases. They're the norm when partnership fails. And the ripple effects touch everything: finances, health, even how long you live. A good marriage extends lifespan. A bad one shortens it. That's not sentiment. That's measurable outcome. But we're not supposed to say that choosing the right partner is an achievement anymore. Instead, we're supposed to celebrate independence as the highest form of existence. Solo living, solo income, solo everything. And if you suggest that partnership might offer something valuable, you're immediately labeled regressive, as if recognizing interdependence somehow cancels out autonomy. I'll tell you what actually got canceled: the acknowledgement that different choices carry different costs. The woman who builds a family at 25 trades certain freedoms for certain securities. The woman who builds a career and delays everything else makes the opposite trade. Both paths have consequences. Both require sacrifice. But only one gets packaged as brave, while the other gets coded as settled. This is where the distortion becomes visible. Go scroll through any platform right now. You'll see endless content about how exhausting motherhood is, how isolating, how identity erasing. Algorithms push it relentlessly. Then, conveniently, you'll see content celebrating pet ownership as the evolved alternative. Fur babies. All the love, none of the burden. And if you're 22 and watching this, what conclusion do you draw? You start thinking, marriage means giving up myself. Children mean giving up my life. So maybe I'll just opt out entirely. Get a dog. Stay free. The problem is, that's not freedom. That's substitution. And 10 years later, the same woman who thought she was choosing autonomy realizes she chose a different kind of dependency, one that doesn't grow, one that doesn't reciprocate in any form that matters long term. The shift happens gradually, then suddenly. First, you're attending friends' weddings and thinking, not yet. Then you're attending baby showers and thinking, not me. Eventually, you're 36, scrolling through photos of other people's families, and something inside you goes quiet. Not regret exactly, more like recognition that a door closed while you weren't paying attention. Now here's the part that gets deliberately obscured. This narrative doesn't just affect women, it's rewritten the male script too. Men used to operate under a clear framework: provide, protect, build something that matters. That framework gave them direction. It also gave them motivation. But when the message became, women don't need men, something shifted in male psychology. If effort goes unrecognized, effort stops. Why would a man push himself to achieve more when the woman in his life frames his provision as baseline expectation? Why would he strive for excellence when his contributions get met with, "You're just doing what you're supposed to do"? He won't. He'll do the minimum, or he'll redirect that energy elsewhere into spaces where effort actually gets acknowledged. The psychology here is straightforward. Human beings escalate behavior that gets reinforced. They diminish behavior that gets ignored. When a man works harder and his partner notices, thanks him, shows genuine appreciation, he works harder still. When he works harder and gets met with silence or dismissal, he recalibrates. He stops going the extra mile because the extra mile produces no extra result. This is where the system starts eating itself. Women were told to demand less from men, to expect nothing, to prove they could handle everything alone. So men stopped offering. Then women noticed the drop in male ambition and labeled it laziness. But it's not laziness, it's withdrawal. When appreciation disappears, so does the incentive to go beyond baseline. You don't get the version of a person who tries harder when you've made it clear their extra effort is irrelevant. I've watched relationships operate on both sides of this divide. In partnerships where effort gets seen and valued, both people escalate. The woman appreciates what the man provides, so he provides more. The man appreciates what the woman creates in their shared life, so she invests more energy into it. It's a reinforcing cycle. Remove appreciation from the equation, and the cycle reverses. Both people start calculating, why am I doing this when it doesn't register? That calculation is lethal to pair bonding. And here's what no one wants to acknowledge. This didn't happen by accident. The narrative that devalues marriage, that mocks traditional roles, that glorifies permanent singlehood, it's not organic. It's too coordinated, too consistent, too algorithmically amplified. You're being shown specific content for a specific reason. If women delay marriage and skip motherhood, they stay in the consumer economy longer. Single households buy more. Two people living separately need two of everything. Credit gets extended twice. Debt accumulates faster. Meanwhile, birth rates drop, which creates its own set of downstream effects that benefit certain systems and destabilize others. Think about the economic logic for a moment. A married couple shares housing costs, shares utilities, shares a vehicle potentially. They're one household consuming one set of resources. Two single people? Double rent, double furniture, double kitchen appliances, double streaming subscriptions. The economy prefers you separated. And if you're convinced that togetherness equals loss of self, you'll stay separated willingly. I'm not saying this to sound conspiratorial. I'm saying it because the pattern is visible once you start looking for it. Every time marriage is framed as a trap, every time motherhood is framed as a dead end, every time you see someone call their pet their child, you're watching a substitution economy in action. Real family formation gets replaced with consumable alternatives. And the cost of that replacement doesn't show up immediately. It shows up 10, 15, 20 years later when an entire generation realizes they opted out of the one thing that actually builds legacy. But by then, the window has closed. Here's the part that's hardest to name clearly. Men and women need each other, not in some abstract, poetic sense. Functionally, men perform better when they have something to build toward that includes another person. Women's well-being is directly tied to the stability of their intimate partnerships. This isn't ideology, it's outcome data. And pretending otherwise doesn't make it less true. It just makes the collision with reality more painful when it finally happens. Right now, an entire cohort is being taught that needing anyone is weakness, that vulnerability equals failure, that if you can't do everything alone, you're not truly empowered. So people are opting out of vulnerability entirely. They're avoiding commitment, avoiding dependence, avoiding anything that looks like traditional structure. And they're calling it progress. It's not progress. It's isolation with better branding. And the men who might have shown up differently, they looked at the new rules and adapted. They stopped pursuing seriously, stopped planning long term, stopped treating relationships as something worth building toward. Because why would they, when commitment gets framed as entrapment and provision gets dismissed as obligation? The whole system locked into a weird equilibrium where nobody wins. Women want men who lead and provide, but they've been told wanting that makes them weak. Men would actually step into those roles, but they've been told their effort doesn't matter. So both sides perform independence they don't actually want, while quietly resenting the other for not showing up the way they used to. And underneath all of it, the core unit that actually builds stable lives is dissolving. I'm not telling you what to choose. I'm telling you the choice has been pre-framed. And the frame determines what you think is possible. If you've been taught that motherhood at 25 means your life is over, you won't even consider it as an option. If you've been taught that marriage is a trap, you won't let yourself want it. But the frame is lying. A strong partnership isn't a limitation. It's a force multiplier. The right person doesn't reduce your capacity. They expand what you can build. And opting out entirely doesn't make you free. It just means you're carrying everything alone, forever. The question isn't whether traditional roles are outdated. The question is whether you've been talked out of something that might have actually worked.